everybody and welcome to this October bullet journal plan with me video. I'll walk you through how I set up this really fall appropriate theme for our new month. But before we get started on that, I'll quickly show you how my last month's theme turned out. As you can see, I always film these videos 1 to 2 weeks prior to the new month, so some pages are still not finished here. But anyway, when we reach the next empty page, we can start focusing on our October layout. I must say we have quite a start this month since I decided once again to paint this whole spread wide watercolor landscape where we have this deer as our main focus. I know this looks super intimidating, but we are gonna take this step by step and I promise you it will make this much easier to approach. Also, the rest of this theme is much more minimal, so if painting is not your thing, feel free to just skip this part. But yeah, after I prepared my watercolor paper here, I'm starting this whole thing by first sketching the deer. I'm using a regular pencil and just slowly starting to define the overall shapes of this animal. I'm figuring out the size and the placement on the page, and then we can start to perfect the details. As always, I really recommend finding some pictures of real deer and just studying them and using those as your reference while drawing. There's nothing wrong with using reference pictures, and you can always make your own modifications to them if you want to. To me, this drawing in particular was a really interesting challenge since I've drawn a deer on my bullet journal on my last December layout, maybe. So almost a year ago, and it was really interesting to see how I had improved since then. I often get comments and questions about how to improve your drawing skills, and my best advice is maybe boring, but it's just to keep practicing. The good news is that I think you actually don't need as much practice as you think. Just using your bullet journal every month or so is already so good place to start, and I'm sure you'll quickly start to see results if you keep doing that. So if you feel intimidated to draw on your journal, just maybe try to look at it from different perspective, because your journal doesn't need to be perfect. No one except you can see it, and you'll definitely learn something from each drawing or painting you're gonna do, even from the ones that don't turn out as you pictured in your mind. So yeah, there's just some encouragement if some of you happen to need it today. And of course, you can always do it like me and use a different paper and then glue the artwork to your journal, so you always have the option to just throw it away and pretend it never happened. That happens to all of us, nothing to be ashamed of. Anyway, back to our deer. So now that the sketch is completed, I'm starting to slowly color this deer with my watercolors. I'm using this pretty tiny brush, so it will be easier to paint all the details, like the eyes and so on. Also, a small brush like this is really good for creating first strokes on the body. There's not much variation in the colors here, but I did pay attention to the dimensions, especially on the face. So for example, leaving the nose and the area around the eyes a little bit lighter makes it look like those are closer to us, if you know what I mean. And then on the contrary, darkening up the cheeks and the neck creates natural shadows to your drawing, and it just makes everything look a bit more realistic. I don't know about you, but to me this deer's face ended up looking weirdly as a sheep. But I don't know, maybe that's just how it is. After this coloring process, we can finally move on to the background. So you could totally leave the background out and just go with the deer. That's what I've usually done with these animal drawings, but I decided to challenge myself a bit this time since painting landscapes is not really my strongest skill, but it's something I'd like to get better at. So I'm doing the background in few different sections. I started with the sky that I just painted really quickly with this light grayish blue. I first wet the whole sky and then just pretty much slapped in some color. After doing that, I moved on to the actual landscape and I started with quite light layers that I slowly started to intensify as I was going. I didn't really have a super clear vision of how this background was gonna end up. I knew I wanted a lot of this yellowish ochre color mixed in with some forest green. My inspiration for this background and actually for my whole monthly theme was Tundra. So I really wanted to use these earthy fallish colors. You can see me also adding this purple to the front. And I just really like these colors together. One thing to note though is to be careful with a color combination like this, because they are complementary colors that don't really mix together well. So I try to leave some empty areas and mesh all the colors really carefully into each other and avoid mixing them as much as possible. You could use endless time on a background like this, so when I was tired of painting, I decided that it was ready. I scanned this whole painting to my computer before cutting it in half, and I'm probably gonna add some slightly bettered version of this to my Etsy shop that's now open, by the way. I will leave the link to my shop to the description bar, and you can now find a few sticker bundles, prints and so on from there. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check it out, but no pressure. Anyway, as a final touch, I added this October calendar to this drawing, and then we're finally done with our whole cover page painting. I'm sorry this took so much time, but actually the rest of my monthly theme is a lot more minimalistic, as I mentioned, so we can kind of balance out this heavy start. So we are now moving on to the monthly page of October, and I decided to just go with a small calendar this month and then write all my important events on a small list we're gonna set up soon. I'm again starting this page from a small decoration piece that will kind of be the main focus on this spread. So I've seen so many of these triangle or round forest drawings on Pinterest, and I kind of wanted to create my own version of that. So I drew this directly to my notebook, and I was using my brush pen blender and a few of my Tombow brush pens. I often use this technique to kind of soften the brush pens a bit. They can be quite harsh and difficult to work with if you just use them directly to the page. Anyways, I started with a really light wash of everything and kept the colors super light because I didn't know how dark I wanted this drawing to be yet. I mainly used the shades of grey and later black with a hint of forest green and the same ochre color in the middle part. I also highly recommend using tape as a border if you want to create sharp edges. I think it really helped to keep everything clean here. And yeah, I just ended up drawing this simple forest mountain landscape with this small river in the middle. It could also be a walking path, I guess. I don't know which one it's exactly trying to be, but it doesn't matter. But after laying down some more colors, I decided I wanted a bit more details to this drawing, so I took out my black micron and just started to go over everything with this and create more of those black messy lines. And I ended up darkening this whole thing quite a lot. Eventually I felt like the top part needed something more, so I just added this round circle to the sky. It could be the sun or the moon or just a random circle there. And then I added this line below the drawing to give it this kinda geometric look. I used some geometric shapes later in this monthly theme as well, and I really ended up liking them a lot. So after our drawing is done, I'm setting up a small October calendar underneath it. Good tip I have if you want to go for more minimal look in your journal is to leave a lot of empty space everywhere. A lot more than you would think. And also you could try to keep the letters and titles a bit smaller than you usually do. I think those are some easy tips for minimal spreads. On the next page, I added this small section for important dates and also my content list that will help me to plan for this month. Then I dedicated the second half of this page only for my master thesis that I really need to work on. It will kind of be my biggest mission on October, and since I'm not super enthusiastic about that, I think setting up this section will make it easier for me to approach it and also to track my progress. At least that's what I hope. So now that we have our minimal monthly page ready, we can move on to the next one. So next I'm setting up a habits spread that I actually haven't done in quite a few months. If you've been watching my videos, I've had my habit trackers on my weekly pages and it has worked well for me, but I just wanted to switch things up this month and also track a little bit more habits that I've done recently. So I set up this horizontal tracker, which is gonna be super simple again. I really like the minimal look of this, and I divided my habits almost in two groups. So the top ones are more self-care related. When I have a lot going on, it's easy for me to start to neglect self-care, which is of course not a very positive thing. And then the second group is more for productivity type habits that I usually track on my journal. I must admit I've been a little bit lazy to track my habits recently. You know, sometimes it just happens, and I hope I could get back to it by changing up my habit tracking method a bit. Then, since obviously there's still space left on this page, I decided to serve it for this cute little squirrel drawing. Squirrel? Squirrel? This is just one of those English words I can't pronounce even if my life depended on it, so I'm sorry for totally mispronouncing it. Anyway, there are so many cute pictures of these, but I decided to go with a pretty regular posture. Once again, sketching everything out with a pencil first. It just makes everything so much easier, and especially if you don't feel confident to draw something, having a really good and finalized sketch might be a big game changer for you. After the sketch, I'm starting to color this squirrel using my brush pens once again. I went with a few different shades of brown. I tried to focus on the fur and also to place the shadows in the right parts. To be honest, this was one of those times I struggled a bit. I wasn't completely happy with how the coloring turned out. I think sometimes using brush pens for drawings like these is probably not the easiest choice. So for example, just colorful pencils would probably work better. And also you wouldn't need to worry about the paper in your journal while laying down all these layers of different water-based colors. So yeah, I don't know if this necessarily matched my whole theme. I think this month keeping up with the colors was a little bit difficult for me because I had so many colors in the beginning, but then overall I like to keep my journal looking pretty simple. So I just kind of ended up going more with the overall vibe of this theme. And you know, I think you can always throw a cute forest animal to almost any fall theme and get away with it. However, now that my simple habits page was ready, we can move on to the first weekly spread of October. So I'm first setting up this really basic weekly layout. The bottom half of this page will be for the weekdays. So this is usually the place where I write down all my daily to-do lists, and I also mark any events or appointments I need to remember. Then on the top left, I set up these two sections. The first one is something I tried out the first time last month, and it's just kind of like my weekly expense tracker. So my way to use this tracker was to once a week actually go through my whole bank account information. So I actually dug up all the expenses I had made and just wrote them down here. I know this might sound so bizarre and boring for many of you, but I think this helped me so much to just understand where my money is going, and it was pretty eye-opening experience. So if you're trying to save money, I think this could be something to give a go. I usually did this the same time as I wrote my weekly diary, which is the bigger section here. I usually write about the things I have accomplished and or just about bigger thoughts or events that took place. Then for once I decided to finish off my weekly spread with a little doodle to match up with the triangle foresting we had on the monthly page. I usually don't decorate my weekly spreads, and I don't know if I'm gonna do that for the rest of the weeks on October either, to be honest. But I thought this page kinda needed something extra, so I decided to just throw in this geometric forest mountain drawing again. I really enjoyed coming up with these, and the best part is that you don't need to be good at drawing to create something like this. You can get away pretty much with just a ruler, a few clean lines, and a black pen. So yeah, super easy decoration idea. After this first weekly spread was done, I flipped over a few pages that will be for the other weeks on October that I will set up later. And then we still have the monthly review page left, which is always the last thing I set up on my monthly layouts. So I always like to write down some questions for myself about the previous month. I think this is a great way to kind of process your life and things like where you are now compared to maybe where you want to be. Did you do things that made you happy? Or was there maybe something that didn't bring the results you wanted? So for me, these pages are the ones where I do that kind of thinking and processing. And also reading these pages from my previous months is actually super interesting. Sometimes I wonder why some months are easier than others. Like, what's the underlying reason that I could be productive or felt more relaxed on one month, and then on the next one I struggle for no obvious reason? I'm just super fascinated by patterns like these, and I always want to understand more and also improve what I'm doing. After this, I set up this little bit awkward box for some of my expectations for October. I think the placement of this was a little bit weird, like here in the last corner of my monthly theme, but I didn't really find any other place for it either. Anyway, I did the same thing last month where I set up some expectations in the beginning of September, and I noticed myself going back to that page quite often. So I think it must have been helpful in a way. And it also helped me to keep track and focus on the things I wanted to accomplish. To finish this page off, I decided to draw another deer and kind of tie everything about this theme together with combining the deer with some geometric shape and forest silhouettes again. If you don't really like drawing small details or you feel like you struggle with them, maybe this kind of all black silhouette drawing could be a good alternative, since here you just need to get the outline right. No need to pay attention for all those small details. But after that drawing came together, we're finally done with this whole monthly layout. I think the painting and the squirrel were probably a little bit random, since I ended up going quite heavily in the geometric shape direction. But I'm still so excited to start to use this new layout, and I also really hope you could get some new ideas for your journals as well. Anyway, I guess that's it, guys. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to stay tuned for all the bullet journaling in the future. And if you want to keep up with my stuff also outside YouTube, I recommend you to check out my Instagram, where I share a little bit behind the scenes stuff and also some extras during the month. But other than that, I really hope all of you have an amazing day or night wherever you are, and see you in my next one. Bye bye!